Hello, welcome to another bite-sized video. Today we'll be taking a look at a comedy film. This is called Bruce Almighty. You may have heard of it. This is, of course, a Jim Carrey film. Came out in 2003, runs about an hour and 41 minutes. It is rated PG-13, and it does have a bit of a small cast, but we do have some great characters here. And of course, this is the movie that has Jim Carrey playing God. So, yeah, that's what this film is best known for. It also has a sequel, which I think is good. It's not as good, but it's pretty enjoyable for what it is. I have seen both. I do think this is the stronger movie, but both are great. So we do have Jim Carrey being his usual Carrey ham self. And we do have him playing Bruce Nolan, who is a news reporter. And so it's his job to cover the news in Buffalo, which I believe it's in New York. And it's kind of a small city in there. And that's the setting. So Bruce Nolan's the main character. We're following his journey. We do have Jennifer Aniston as Grace, who is his girlfriend. And she does a great job, kind of bouncing off of Carrey's ad-libbing skills. I believe almost all the lines in this film are ad-libs, which is pretty impressive. You can see some of the actors trying to follow him at certain points, which is pretty fun. And yeah, Jennifer does a great job. She gets a lot to do. She has some great emotional scenes, which I'm not going to spoil, but they are pretty important. And she has some great comedy bits as well, which is great. She has great chemistry with Jim, which is pretty important for the two leading stars. So it's pretty great. And we also have Morgan Freeman playing God. Yes, the God himself. And it's pretty fun to see him in this kind of very comedic. It's kind of a mix between serious comedy. So he's serious, but he's also very funny. It's kind of hard to explain. You got to see it to understand. He does a fantastic job. It's just great. He plays the janitor. He plays the electrician. There's a lot of funny stuff with him, and of course he plays God. And it's funny to see him bounce off of Carrey, who is just confused as all heck. We'll get to that in a minute. We also have a couple, some other people. We have Steve Carell in a minor role as Evan Baxter, who, obviously, if you know this series, he gets his own movie, Evan Almighty, which followed this film. So he's the main character in that movie, but in this film, he's kind of a small role, but he does a great job, with whichever scenes he's in. In particular, there is a scene, I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a scene in the newsroom with Steve Carell, his character, Evan, and it's just funny as all heck. I'm not going to spoil it. You may know what I'm talking about, but that scene in particular is probably one of the best scenes. We also have Grace's sister, Debbie, who's played by Lisa Ann Walter. She does a great job. She's not in the movie that much, but she does do a lot with what little she's given. Has some great lines, and she has a great chemistry with Aniston, which I think is important again, which is great. All the actors in this film have a great chemistry with one another, which if that didn't work, then the whole movie would probably not work, but thank goodness it did. And lastly, we have Catherine Bell as a minor character, Susan, who is one of the fellow newscasters. So she does a great job. Again, she's not in the movie a ton, but she does do a lot, again, with what she's given. And the story is pretty simple. Bruce Nolan wants to get, he wants to be higher up in the chain of the newsroom. So he wants to be, a top level reporter. And so he's trying to get whatever he can. He's desperate. But Evan Baxter, Steve Carell, his character, he's like the top, he's the top reporter. And so Bruce is trying to, rise above Evan. He's trying to be better. He's just desperate at this point for something to happen. And so by chance, he happens to meet God, who gives him his powers for a little over a week. It's not exactly stated when he gets the powers and then when he loses the powers. So it's a little bit ambiguous, a little hard to tell. But anyway, yeah, Morgan Freeman comes in as God. That probably my favorite scene. Probably my favorite scene is, I have a lot of favorite scenes, but my favorite is when God is introduced and he's the entire building scene, the whole white room building scene. You probably know what I'm saying if you've seen the movie, but that entire scene, I'm pretty sure was all ad-libbed. And the file cabinet, that was funny. You got the clap on. That scene is great. You know, you suck. That line and like all of that. That is just funny. It's just funny to me. I like this movie is mainly comedy. Like it's very funny focused. There's a lot of like just jokey joke after joke after joke. It's if you don't like Jim Carrey's comedy, you're probably not gonna like this movie. In fact, you definitely won't like it. If you're not a fan of Jim Carrey, then why are you even watching this? Um, I think it's great. I think it's one of his best performances. My favorite Jim Carrey performance is still Count Olaf. Some about that. That movie, the series of unfortunate events. Well, I've reviewed that already. But that is, I think, his best performance is Count Olaf. But I think Bruce Nolan, he does a great job in this movie of being not just funny, but especially when he gets God's powers. But I think he does a great job, especially in the emotional moments between him and Grace, because they have kind of a struggling relationship. And at one point, she actually leaves him because she thinks that he cheated on her, and that whole fiasco. And so he gets God's powers, and he starts using them for good, kind of towards the end, which I think is great. And when he's ready to give them up, he surrenders his will to God, which I think is awesome because that's a great message to take away. And I don't know, I just think that's really well done. And there's lots of great signature scenes in this movie where there's the walking on the water bit, there's the parting of the red soup to the red tomato soup, there's the white Lamborghini, I believe it's the sports car scene. There's the Clint Eastwood scene. There's the newsroom scene, which I'm not gonna spoil. There's the dog peeing every 5 seconds. That's funny. There's the monkey scene in the alley. That's great. Um, there are so many great scenes in this film. It's hard for me to pick a favorite, but I think my favorite whole scene is probably that again, the white building room. Just so the introduction. I just think it's really well written, and Freeman and Carrey do a great job of bouncing off each other really fast. Like the elevator is out of order. That's fun. The stairs were my second option. That was fun. Um, it's just so great. I love when he gets God's powers and it's all funny, and then it turns to, it's kind of serious at the end. And I'm gonna spoil a little bit of the ending here, but he does almost die, and it has something to do. The solution has something to do with blood. I'm not gonna spoil that, but again, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of important, which I think is cool. And Grace also gets a lot of funny scenes. I will say, if you are thinking about showing this to younger kids, I'd say you probably want to wait until they're about 12, maybe 11, 12, 13, because there is some swearing. There is some adult scenes. There's no nudity, but it's kind of risque. Um, there's a particular scene with Bruce and Grace in their apartment. I'm not gonna say anything else. I'm just gonna say that scene is kind of not for kids. It's kind of mature in a way. It's not super graphic or anything. I'm just saying if a younger kid is watching this, just be aware you may want to skip that scene. Otherwise, all the comedy's pretty good. It's pretty fun. It's fast paced. It's funny. It's got great. The comedy is top notch. I think again one of the best scenes is in Niagara Falls, and near the beginning, Bruce just goes on this whole tangent, and I'm pretty sure Jim Carrey ad libbed that whole speech at Niagara Falls. I'm not gonna spoil it, of course, but you'll know when you see it. So that was great. This whole movie is great. I have no problems with this movie. Um, there's nothing wrong with it, honestly. Um, it's funny. It's got great emotional scenes. It's got um, just great scenes. Sorry, that's a motorcycle. Um, and yeah, I think it's great. If you love Jim Carrey and you haven't watched Bruce Almighty, do yourself a favor. Sit down. You will not regret watching this. It's a great comedy. If you love slapstick, if you like funny one-liners, witty comments, you're gonna love this film. And I think the story is actually really interesting. You know, the relationship between Grace and Bruce. Um, and it's really fun. And I like the ending especially. The ending is probably the best part. Um, it just brings everything back. And yeah, it's just a great film with great performances, just even great music as well, and just great scenes. Man, if you love comedies, you got to check out Bruce Almighty. And the sequel isn't nearly as good, but I think it does have some of the charm. And yeah, I think these are fantastic movies in my opinion. Great films, great comedies. I'm gonna give Bruce Almighty a 10 out of 10. So, yeah, I've seen this a bunch of times. I rewatched it the other day, and I think it's just great. Menu's great, special features are great. It's just a great film. But let me know, have you seen Bruce Almighty? What do you think about it? Do you think it's terrible? Do you think it's good? What do you think about it? What do you think of Evan Almighty? Do you think this is one of Carrey's best, or do you think a different movie is better than this? Let me know. I've seen the majority of his work, so I'd like to have a comment or a conversation with you down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll try to review as many comedies as I can. But until then, take care. Have an awesome rest of your day. I'll see you later. Have a good one.